Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I want to talk about episode 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon and talk about all the new teaser images that we got yesterday. There's a lot of stuff that came out that I'm actually kind of surprised about in terms of some of the images here, because some of them, I mean, it really does tease the story for episode 2, but there's a character here that they're really highlighting quite a bit here, and so I wonder if she's going to have a really big episode here in episode 2. So yeah, I want to talk about that. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Comic-Con is in like 2 weeks from now. It's a little over 2 weeks from now. Episode 2 comes out in just a couple of days, so there's a lot to talk about. And also, The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2 actually had their premiere yesterday in Madrid. Norman Reedus, Melissa McBride, Scott Gimple, there was Greg Nicotero, David Zabel. The whole cast was there. It was a really cool event. There was a red carpet and whatnot, so just a really cool premiere. I think having the premiere in Spain is really cool because obviously Season 3 is going to be in Spain, right? So in terms of how they get to Spain and all that, obviously there's a lot of that we'll have to wait and see, but they are going to be in Spain for the story, right? Like however the story works out here, they're somehow going to be in Spain for Season 3, just because they're filming there for Seasons 3 and 4, right? And they're not going to be filming there if it's not going to be set in Spain. And so we'll have to see where the story eventually, gets to, but I do really wonder how they're going to build up that story for Spain because, I mean, obviously that's going to be a really big story for Seasons 3 and 4. But yeah, we'll have to start with episode 2, which is airing this Sunday. But let's actually talk about, I guess, the teaser images here. We do see this first shot here of Sylvie. And again, there's actually quite a bit of shots of Sylvie just sort of in general. Like out of all the teaser images here, we have Daryl and Carol, which is pretty obvious. Like they're going to be in probably every single, teaser image that they release because those are the two main characters of the show. But you have Laurent, which is to be expected because he's a main character. But Sylvie is the other character, and so it's just these 4 characters. And so again, Laurent you sort of expect because he is a bigger part of the story, but Sylvie is in a lot of these images here, which tells me that she's going to have a pretty big role here in episode 2. And the synopsis for episode 2 says that Daryl and Carol, that they find something going on at the nest. And so I'm assuming that Sylvie is going to be involved in that in some way here. So Sylvie, maybe she knows something about what's going on. Maybe she can't tell Isabel about this or that, or maybe she finds out something and then tells Isabel, like she's going to be a big part of the story here overall. And I'm really curious about where this is going to go overall, because we do have a shot here of Daryl, and we've seen a lot of shots like this actually in previous teasers where there's a lot of stuff happening, like in terms of battles and whatnot. And I'm assuming this is happening at the nest. Like there is going to be some sort of battle that does happen there. And so we know there's going to be this ceremony happening in episode 2. So I'm assuming the way that the episode is going to play out is Daryl and Isabel and Sylvie, I'm assuming, or maybe she's not with them. Maybe she knows something and maybe she's more of the villain with Lo Sang, though I would assume probably not because she was with Isabel for all of season 1. So I think she will be with Isabel and Daryl, right? So yeah, that idea, I would probably just ignore that. I don't think she really knows anything. If anything, she's going to discover something and then tell Isabel and Daryl, right? So I think Isabel and Daryl, they're going to find out something at some point here in this episode. The whole ceremony is going to be happening probably early on to like halfway through the episode or something. And then I'm assuming Madame Genet's forces at some point attack the nest because for some reason there's a battle happening there, right? So something is happening here, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I do think it's going to be, the main part of the episode. There was a lot of criticism after episode 1 about, the fact that they were focusing on Carol too much, which I do kind of find a little silly just because we haven't really seen Carol in a very long time. I do understand the criticism, from the aspect of like you want to focus more on the France storyline because that's the main storyline of the show. So episode 1, it was very not focused on that at all. It was a totally different story. You saw some stuff of Daryl, but he was in the episode like really not a lot at all. So I do understand it from that aspect, but I will say that I think Carol really needed the premiere episode to focus on how she gets to France and to sort of build all that up. I do think this season is going to get better and better. In terms of the early reviews, there's a lot of talk about episodes 4 and 6. And so I'm really excited for those episodes. I know there's been some mentions of like really cool moments happening in 2 and 3 as well. There hasn't been a lot of talk about episode 1. So I think that the criticisms for 1, just in general, in terms of the early reviewers probably felt the same way as well. So that's why there hasn't been a lot of talk about episode 1. But personally for me, I liked episode 1 and the fact that they actually focused on on Carol. Like, yes, there was conveniences here and there, but I think you needed to focus on the character and build up that story there to sort of have her, in France. Again, I say this all the time, but if there was more episodes of the season, then I think maybe things wouldn't have been so rushed and things could have been explained a little bit better, but it is what it is. I think in this episode here, we will see Carol, and we'll talk about Carol in a second here, but Daryl and the storyline at the nest is going to be a big focus here for episode 2, and I do think it's going to be probably the main storyline for episode 2, which is definitely very exciting because I do want to see where they're going to go next, because at some point Daryl and Isabel are going to get captured. I think that's going to happen around episode 3 or 4. Like, it's somewhere around there. Like, honestly, I don't really see what else is going to happen before that. Like, I think they get captured, and then afterwards Daryl breaks out at some point, right? And then I'm assuming there's going to be some stuff that happens, but Daryl and Carol are going to reunite at some point around there, and then there's a bunch of stuff that happens after that. So there's a lot, honestly, happening around episodes 3 and 4, and so I think a lot of the stuff at the nest is going to be the big focus here for episode 2. So I'm excited for that, and I think fans that, didn't really like episode 1 because of the lack of any sort of story from, France and the nest and all of that, we're going to get that here in episode 2. But I do want to talk about some of the other shots here because, yeah, obviously we have Sylvie and we have Daryl, but we do also have some shots of Laurent as well. And so Laurent, I mean, obviously his story is going to be connected to the nest and sort of the ceremony and all that. So that will be a big part of it. And again, when you're looking at the teaser images overall, like Sylvie, Daryl, and Laurent pretty much are the main focus here. But we also do have Carol as well. And she's in a different location here. And so at this point, I know that she's in France just because of the weapon that she has here. There's a lot of shots from like previous teaser trailers where she has the same weapon and she's already in France. And so I think this confirms that she will for sure get to France in episode 2. And so whatever sort of stop she makes in the very beginning of episode 2 is probably not going to be a big part of the episode. I think it'll play a role for like half the episode maybe, and then eventually she will get to France. Then I think it's not just going to be her getting to France and then looking around. I think there's going to be a lot more here because the stuff that we see of Carol, it's not like she's first just arriving to France and is just looking around. Like, that was the one thing that I always sort of predicted for episode 2, was that it was basically going to be a focus on her, stopping off somewhere and then eventually getting to France, but the episode would end with her arriving to France and just sort of looking around and being like, whoa, I'm here, right? But I think she's going to get there, a bit earlier on. And then there seems to be some stuff that actually happens. And so she's actually looking around here and it looks like she's concerned in some of the shots. And so I think that she's actually going to run into Pouvoir here at the very end of episode 2 because of this one shot right here of Carol where she's beside this vehicle. There's a symbol here on the vehicle that could be related to Pouvoir. I mean, I'm not entirely sure on that, but I think that she is going to run into Pouvoir here in this episode. And I don't know if she's taken captive or if she just sort of joins the group because she's wondering like, well, maybe they know something about Daryl, right? Like, that could be kind of interesting. She might hear something about, oh, they're looking for the American. And so she's like, oh, wait, what? Is that Daryl? There could be a mention of something like that, but I do think that's likely where this episode is going here for Carol. We're going to see a bunch of stuff, really cool stuff. I will say Ash is not here, so I don't know if Ash dies before this or if he's just gonna, stay behind, I guess, with the plane. I'm assuming that he's staying behind with the plane just because there's some shots of Ash in the teaser trailer that happen at nighttime and there's walkers behind him. And so I'm assuming that happens later on, though I guess that could happen, I guess during some of the scenes that happen at nighttime in episode 2. So maybe he does die in episode 2, but I don't think so just because of Carol's lie that she told to Ash. I feel like that's going to be a big part of the season. There's no way that they're wrapping that up already in episode 2 and he just dies and then Carol just sort of gets away with that lie. Like, there's no way. They built that up so well in episode 1. I think he is going to survive, and I do think he's probably going to stay behind with the plane because he's not with Carol afterwards. And so I don't know, like, what else is he going to do, right? Like, I feel like it makes sense to watch the plane. Like, why would you leave? Like, if you left, somebody could just take the plane and then what are you going to do, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. He's probably going to stay behind with the plane and Carol's going to go look around for, I guess, Sophia technically is what she told him, right? And so, yeah, these shots here honestly really told me a lot about the episode here. I'm really curious as to how the episode's going to play out. Sylvie's going to be a really big part of the episode, obviously, and it looks like we're getting a really big storyline here at the nest. And I wonder if a lot of the, the action scenes that we saw in the Comic-Con trailer with the battle happening at the nest actually happens here in episode 2 because of maybe something that Daryl and Isabel find out about the nest, right? At least based off of the synopsis anyway. So we'll have to wait and see. You know, my predictions for episode 2 as of right now is that in terms of the ending scene anyways and where they could go, I could see Daryl and Isabel being taken captive by Madame Genet and then brought to wherever I guess Pouvoir is staying at, right? Like whatever their main base is. And then in terms of Carol, I think that she'll probably join Pouvoir just based off of some of these images here. I think it'll be something like that just because episode 3, I mean, I think episode 3 or 4 around there, Daryl should be taken captive, right? So it'll play out somehow like that. I mean, if Daryl's not taken captive in episode 2 or if Carol doesn't find out about Pouvoir in episode 2, I think all of that will happen in episode 3 for sure. So it'll likely be something like that. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post your thoughts down below and your predictions down below for episode 2. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.